fall back. Fall back. 30 elite bodyguards collapsed. Neutralized. Useless. One black housekeeper holding a laundry basket stepped forward. 60 seconds later, two attackers were unconscious, and the most feared man in Seoul was staring at her like he'd just seen a ghost. What he did next ended her invisible life forever. If you love stories where the underestimated rise up and shock the world, hit that subscribe button for Ebony and Pearl stories right now. You won't regret it. Ban Hyuk-jin's private estate sat high in the hills outside Seoul, like a fortress carved from silence and steel. Motion sensors tracked every shadow. Surveillance cameras covered every angle. And 30 elite bodyguards, handpicked from ex-military units across 4 countries, patrolled the grounds with the kind of confidence that came from never losing. No one got close to Ban Hyuk-jin. Not rivals. Not enemies. Not ghosts from the past. The compound wasn't just secure. It was untouchable. Inside the main hall, Hyuk-jin stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, hands clasped behind his back, watching the sunset bleed into the Seoul skyline. His expression was calm, unreadable, the kind of face that had stared down warlords, politicians, and men twice his size without flinching. He was known across 3 continents for 2 things: his ability to predict betrayal before it happened, and his complete lack of mercy when it did. Tonight, he felt nothing. No tensión. No concern. Just the quiet hum of power. Then the alarm screamed. Red lights flooded the compound. Security monitors flashed to life. Boots pounded across marble floors as the entire team mobilized in seconds. The head of security's voice crackled over every earpiece. Perimeter breach. Northeast gata. All units respond. Code black. Code black meant lethal threat. The guards moved with military precision, formation tight, weapons ready, eyes sharp. They'd trained for this, drilled for this. They were ready for this. Hyuk-jin didn't even turn from the window. Handled, he murmured to himself. Because it always was. At the far end of the estate, near the servants' quarters, Autumn Belmonte was cleaning the marble floors in the East Wing hallway. She had one earbud in, listening to an old jazz playlist, but kept the other ear free, a habit from her old life she couldn't quite shake. The alarms didn't startle her. She simply paused mid-stroke with a mop, straightened, and listened. Boots running. Voices shouting. The low mechanical hum of the estate's security doors locking down in sequence. Autumn had worked here for 2 years. Long enough to know the rhythms of the compound. Long enough to recognize when something felt off. She glanced toward the window. 30 guards had just rushed past the courtyard, confident, synchronized, moving like a machine built to crush anything in its path. She went back to mopping. They're going to regret that formation, she muttered quietly to herself. No one was around to hear her. No one ever was. That's how Autumn Belmonte preferred it. Invisible. Ignored. Unremarkable. She wore the same plain housekeeper uniform every day, black dress, white apron, comfortable shoes worn smooth from years of work. Her hair was always pulled back in a neat bun. Her movements were efficient, quiet, designed to blend into walls and disappear into corners. The guards never looked at her. The staff barely spoke to her. And Hyuk-jin? He'd probably walked past her 100 times without ever registering her face. That was fine. Autumn didn't need to be seen. She needed to be safe. And for 2 years, this job had given her exactly that. Steady pay. No questions. No background checks deep enough to matter. She'd left her old life behind for a reason. But tonight, as she moved down the hallway toward the supply closet, she heard something that made her stop. Footsteps. Too fast. Too panicked. Then shouting. Fall back. Fall back. Autumn's grip tightened on the mop handle. She stepped quietly toward the window overlooking the north courtyard and looked down. What she saw didn't make sense. Guards were falling. Not dying. Not shot. Just neutralized. One by one, They hit the ground, disarmed, stunned, sprawled across the stone pavement like broken toys. And the attackers?
Calm.
Methodical. Efficient. Autumn's eyes narrowed. She recognized the pattern immediately. They're not trying to kill anyone, she whispered. They're sending a message. She watched as another guard charged forward, brave, confident, completely predictable. He went down in 3 seconds. Autumn sighed. They rely too much on force. They don't think. Down in the courtyard, the head of security barked orders into his earpiece, voice cracking with frustration. Regroup. Defensive positions. Protect the boss. But it didn't matter. The guards were trained to fight. The attackers were trained to outthink. And one by one, the so-called untouchable security team crumbled. At the center of it all, Band Hyuk-jin stood perfectly still, hands still clasped behind his back, watching the chaos unfold with the same unreadable expression. He wasn't panicking. He was studying. From the window above, Autumn watched the final guard fall. The courtyard went silent except for the groans of defeated men and the soft trickle of the fountain in the center. One masked attacker turned slowly toward Hyuk-jin, weapon raised. Autumn's breath caught. She glanced at the laundry basket she'd left by the hallway entrance, then back at the courtyard, then at Hyuk-jin, standing alone, surrounded by failure. Not my problem, she whispered, but her feet were already moving. By the time the last guard fell, Autumn Belmonte already knew how this would end. If you can't stand people who judge others based on their job title instead of their skill, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us what time you're watching this. Only people who respect the underestimated will make it to the end of the story. Autumn moved quickly down the hallway, her footsteps silent against the marble floor. Through the window, she could see the entire scene playing out like a badly choreographed dance. The attackers weren't rushing. They weren't angry. They weren't even particularly violent. They were methodical. Each move was calculated. Each strike was precise. Every guard that charged forward fell within seconds, not from overwhelming force, but from technique. One guard swung his baton hard and fast. The attacker sidestepped, redirected the momentum, and used the guard's own weight to send him crashing into the fountain wall. Another guard tried a tactical advance, low, controlled, textbook formation. The attacker swept his legs, locked his arm, and pinned him face down on the stone in 3 fluid motions. No wasted energy. No unnecessary drama. Just efficiency. Autumn's eyes tracked every movement, cataloging patterns the guards were too proud or too panicked to notice. They're overcommitting, she whispered to herself. Every single one of them is leading with strength instead of strategy. The attackers knew it too. They were counting on it. Down in the courtyard, Ban Hyuk-jin stood perfectly still, watching his security team crumble. His expression hadn't changed. No fear.
No anger.
Just that same calm, unreadable mask he wore like armor. But inside, his mind was moving fast. This wasn't a hit. If they'd wanted him dead, he'd already be dead. This was a message. Someone wanted him to know that his untouchable fortress wasn't untouchable, that his elite guards weren't elite, that the power he'd built his empire on could be dismantled in minutes. And they wanted him to watch it happen. Hyuk-jin's jaw tightened slightly. Interesting, he murmured. Autumn reached the servants' staircase and paused. She could turn around, walk away, pretend she never saw anything. It wasn't her fight. It wasn't her problem. She'd spent 2 years staying invisible, staying safe, staying out of everyone's way. That was the deal she'd made with herself when she left her old life behind. Keep your head down. Don't get involved.
Survive.
But her eyes drifted back to the courtyard window. The last attacker was moving toward Hyuk-jin now, weapon raised, movements deliberate and unhurried. The message was almost complete. And if she did nothing, Ban Hyuk-jin, feared across 3 continents, would either be killed or humiliated in front of his entire organization. Autumn exhaled slowly. This is a terrible idea, she whispered. Then she grabbed the laundry basket she'd left at the top of the stairs and started walking. She entered the courtyard through the side door, moving quietly, keeping her head down. No one noticed her. They never did. The final attacker had his back to her, focused entirely on Hyukjin. The other attackers had already started retreating into the shadows. Mission accomplished, message delivered. Autumn set the laundry basket down gently near the fountain. Then she picked up a fallen guard's baton from the ground. Just this once, she told herself. Then back to invisible. She stepped forward. The attacker heard her footsteps and turned. Too late. Autumn didn't hesitate, didn't announce herself, didn't give him time to react. She moved efficiently, one step into his space, one controlled strike to the nerve cluster in his wrist. The weapon dropped. Before he could recover, she used his own momentum against him, sweeping his legs and guiding him down with a controlled lock that left him pinned and breathless on the stone pavement. 10 seconds. The second attacker, who'd been covering the retreat, spun toward her. Autumn was already moving. She used the fountain as cover, staying low, reading his body language. He was faster than the first one, better trained. But he made the same mistake the guards did. He led with strength. Autumn waited for the opening, stepped inside his guard, redirected his arm with minimal effort, and locked his shoulder joint in a position that gave him exactly two choices: go down or dislocate. He went down. 30 seconds total. 2 attackers neutralized. The courtyard fell into stunned silence. Autumn straightened her uniform, adjusted her gloves, and glanced at the groaning attackers on the ground. Sloppy, she muttered. Then she looked up and met Ban Hyukjin's eyes. He was staring at her, not with gratitude, not with fear, with something she hadn't seen in a long time.
Genuine surprise.
The remaining attackers melted into the night, their message delivered, but their execution flawed. The 30 elite bodyguards groaned and stirred, pride more damaged than bodies.
And Hyukjin?
He took one slow step toward Autumn, then another, studying her the way a jeweler studies a diamond pulled from dirt. Who? He asked quietly, voice steady but edged with something sharp. Are you? Autumn hesitated. She could lie.
Deflect.
Disappear back into the walls where she belonged. But something about the way he looked at her, not through her, but at her, made lying feel pointless. Autumn Belmonte, she said. Housekeeper. Hyukjin's eyes narrowed slightly. No, he said. That's your job, not who you are. For the first time in years, Ban Hyukjin felt surprised. If you're tired of people being judged by their uniform instead of their skill, hit subscribe and comment. Respect is earned, not given. Only people who look down on service workers will skip this. Autumn held Hyukjin's gaze for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. I used to work security, she said quietly. Private contracts. International. High-risk clients. Hyukjin's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition. Calculation. And, he prompted. Autumn glanced at the unconscious attackers on the ground, then back at him. My sister got sick 3 years ago, she said. Someone needed to be home. Someone needed to pay the medical bills without traveling to war zones every other month. She paused, adjusting the sleeve of her uniform. This job was steady, quiet. It didn't ask questions about where I'd been or what I'd done. I just needed to blend in and stay out of the way. Clearly, Hyukjin said, gesturing to the fallen attackers, you succeeded. Autumn's lips twitched slightly. Until tonight, around them, the courtyard was still. The 30 elite bodyguards were scattered across the stone pavement, some groaning, some sitting up slowly, all of them staring at the housekeeper who'd done in 60 seconds what they couldn't do in 10 minutes. The remaining attackers had vanished into the soul night, their message delivered, but their execution embarrassingly incomplete. And Autumn? She bent down, picked up her laundry basket, and set it carefully on the fountain ledge like absolutely nothing had happened. She smoothed her apron, checked her bun, adjusted her gloves. The same quiet, invisible routine she did every single day. Hyuk-jin watched her with a kind of focus most people reserved for studying blueprints or battle plans. "You're not afraid," he observed. Autumn looked at him. "Of what?" "Of me. Of this." He gestured to the compound, the guards, the violence still lingering in the air. "Most people in your position would be terrified right now." Autumn shrugged. "I've worked for worse," she said simply. "And I've seen scarier situations than a coordinated breach by professionals who clearly weren't trying to kill anyone." Hyuk-jin's eyebrow raised slightly. "You noticed?" "Of course I noticed," Autumn replied. "They weren't here to assassinate you. They were here to humiliate you, to prove your security was overconfident and underprepared." She tilted her head, and they were right. From across the courtyard, the head of security, a broad-shouldered man named Kong Min-jun, limped forward, his face flushed red with fury and humiliation. "She endangered the boss," he snapped, pointing at Autumn like she'd committed treason. "She had no authority to engage. She doesn't belong here." Hyuk-jin raised one finger. Just one. The courtyard fell into absolute silence.
Minunez mel snacked shots.
Hyuk-jin didn't raise his voice, didn't turn his head, didn't even look in Min-jun's direction. He simply kept his eyes locked on Autumn. "She saved my life," Hyuk-jin said evenly. "She did what 30 trained men could not." Min-jun's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Autumn met Hyuk-jin's gaze, without flinching. "I didn't do it for you," she said quietly. "I did it because I hate sloppy work." For the first time in years, Ban Hyuk-jin, the man who'd stared down warlords, politicians, and enemies on 3 continents without blinking, smiled. Not a smirk, not a polite gesture, a real, genuine smile. "How long did it take you?" he asked. 60 seconds, Autumn replied. "Give or take." Hyuk-jin glanced at the 2 unconscious attackers, then at his 30 bodyguards who were still processing their defeat. "Your guards rely too much on force," Autumn continued, her voice calm and factual. "They don't think. They react. And the moment someone smarter comes along, they fall apart." Min-jun bristled, but one sharp look from Hyuk-jin kept him silent. "And you?" Hyuk-jin asked Autumn. "What do you rely on?" Autumn considered the question.
"Balance," she said.
"Momentum. Reading people faster than they can read me."
She paused.
"And staying invisible until it actually matters." Hyuk-jin studied her for a long moment. The way she stood, the way she spoke, the way she carried herself with quiet confidence that had nothing to do with arrogance and everything to do with competence. He saw what no one else in the compound had ever bothered to notice. Autumn Belmonte wasn't a housekeeper. She was a weapon hiding in plain sight. And now that he'd seen her in action, Ban Hyuk-jin knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't letting her disappear again. "Tomorrow morning," he said quietly, "you and I are going to have a very different conversation." Autumn picked up her laundry basket and slung it over her hip. "Good night, Mr. Ban," she said. "And next time, maybe hire guards who think before they charge." She walked past him, past the groaning bodyguards, past the furious head of security, past the wreckage of the so-called untouchable fortress, and disappeared into the servants' entrance, like a shadow melting into walls. Hyuk-jin stood alone in the courtyard, surrounded by failure and the echo of her footsteps. Min-jun limped over, his pride more bruised than his body. "Sir," he said carefully, "we can't trust her. She's just a housekeeper who did your job better than you." Hyuk-jin interrupted, his voice dangerously soft.
Min-jun fell silent.
Hyuk-jin turned and walked back toward the main hall, hands clasped behind his back, mind already working through possibilities and plans. "Prepare a full security review," he said over his shoulder, "and find out everything there is to know about Autumn Belmonte." "Yes, sir." Hyukjin paused at the entrance, glancing back at the courtyard one last time. A housekeeper holding a laundry basket had just rewritten everything he thought he knew about power. And Ban Hyukjin never let talent go to waste. If you can't stand people who dismiss others based on their job title instead of their skill, drop a comment saying talent over title and hit subscribe. Only people who judge others unfairly will skip this. The next morning, Autumn was cleaning the second-floor hallway when two security guards appeared at either end of the corridor. Ms. Belmonte, one of them said stiffly. Mr. Ban has requested your presence in the main conference room. Autumn paused mid-wipe, cloth still in hand.
Now.
She glanced at her cleaning cart, then back at the guards. Can I at least change? Mr. Ban said to bring you as you are. Autumn exhaled slowly and set down her cloth. This should be fun, she muttered. The main conference room was packed. Every member of the security team sat around the long table, 30 humiliated bodyguards, tactical advisors, surveillance specialists, and at the head of it all, Kang Min-jun, the head of security. His face was still bruised from the night before. His pride was bruised worse. And when Autumn walked in wearing her housekeeper uniform, pushing her cleaning cart because the guards hadn't given her time to leave it behind, the room went cold. Ban Hyukjin sat at the far end of the table, hands folded, expression unreadable. Ms. Belmonte, he said evenly. Please sit. Autumn hesitated, then walked to the empty chair next to him and sat down, straightening her apron like she was attending a formal dinner. Mind if I leave the cart by the door? She asked lightly. It gets lonely. A few of the younger guards smirked.
민윤의 Stereotypend.
Hyukjin's expression didn't change. We're here, he began, to conduct a security review. Last night's breach was unacceptable. 30 trained operatives failed to protect this estate.
He paused.
One housekeeper succeeded. The room shifted uncomfortably. Min-jun leaned forward, his voice tight. With all due respect, sir, Ms. Belmonte endangered you. She had no authority to engage. No training protocol.
No clearance.
She acted recklessly and got lucky. Autumn raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Hyukjin turned to her. Ms. Belmonte, he said calmly, explain what happened last night. Autumn glanced around the table at 30 pairs of eyes, some curious, most hostile. You want the truth or the version that protects feelings? She asked. The truth. Autumn nodded and leaned back in her chair. Your guards are overtrained in force and undertrained in strategy, she said bluntly. They rely on intimidation, physical strength, and formation tactics that work against amateurs but crumble against professionals. Min-jun's face flushed red. That's... Hyukjin raised one finger. Silence. Continue, Hyukjin said to Autumn. The attackers last night weren't trying to kill you, Autumn explained. They were sending a message. They wanted to prove your security was overconfident and predictable. She gestured to the guards around the table. And they were right. Every single guard charged forward using the same approach, aggression first, thinking second. The attackers counted on that. They baited your men into overcommitting, used their momentum against them, and neutralized them one by one. One of the tactical advisors frowned. And you, he asked, what did you do differently? I waited, Autumn said simply. I watched. I saw their pattern. Then I moved when they weren't expecting it. She paused. I didn't try to overpower them. I used balance, redirection, and the fact that nobody ever looks at the help. The room bristled. You're saying we failed because we're not sneaky enough? One guard snapped, his voice dripping with resentment. I'm saying you failed because you don't adapt, Autumn replied calmly. You have one playbook, and the second someone reads it, you're done. This is insulting, Min-jun said, standing abruptly. She's a housekeeper. She cleans floors. She doesn't know the first thing about real security. I worked private security for 6 years, Autumn interrupted, her voice steady but sharp. International contracts. Diplomatic details.
Vatsonus.
I've protected heads of state, corporate executives, and people a lot more paranoid than Mr. Ban. She met Minjun's eyes without flinching. I chose to clean floors because it paid steady and didn't ask questions. That doesn't make me incompetent. It makes me smart enough to know when to disappear. Minjun's face turned scarlet. Then why didn't you disappear last night? He shot back. Why risk everything to play hero? Autumn's expression hardened slightly. Because I hate watching good people get hurt by bad strategy, she said quietly. And because letting your boss die out of pride seemed like a pretty stupid way to keep a low profile. The room erupted. Guards argued. Advisors muttered. Class tension, buried for years beneath hierarchy and politeness, surfaced like a wound that had never properly healed. She has no right. Who does she think she is? This is our job. Hyuk-jin sat perfectly still, watching Autumn. She didn't flinch, didn't argue back, didn't defend herself. She just sat there, calm and slightly bored, like she'd been through 100 meetings exactly like this one. Finally, Hyuk-jin raised one finger. The room went silent. He stood slowly, walked to the center of the table, and looked at each guard in turn. Ms. Belmonte is right, he said quietly. Last night, 30 of you failed. One woman with a laundry basket succeeded. He turned to Autumn. You saw what my team could not. You acted when they hesitated. You protected me when protection was needed.
He paused.
You are indispensable. Autumn blinked, genuinely surprised. Sir. Tomorrow morning, Hyuk-jin continued, there will be changes. Significant ones. He looked at Minjun. Prepare yourself. The meeting ended in tense silence. As the guards filed out, Autumn stood and grabbed her cart, fully expecting to be escorted off the property within the hour. Hyuk-jin stopped her at the door. You think I'm going to fire you, he observed. Or worse. Autumn replied honestly. Hyuk-jin studied her for a long moment. Tomorrow, he said, you'll understand why that would be impossible. Autumn frowned, but Hyuk-jin had already turned away, leaving her standing in the hallway with her cleaning cart and a sinking feeling that her quiet, invisible life was about to end. If you can't stand people who judge others based on their uniform instead of their abilities, comment, skills over status, and hit subscribe. Only people who look down on service workers will skip this story. The next morning, Autumn was summoned again. This time, it wasn't just the security team. It was everyone. Bodyguards, lieutenants, tactical advisors, administrative staff, kitchen workers, drivers. Every single person who worked on Ban Hyuk-jin's estate stood gathered in the main courtyard. Autumn arrived last, still wearing her housekeeper uniform, her hair pulled back in the same neat bun, her expression calm but guarded. Whispers rippled through the crowd as she walked to the front. That's her. The one who stopped the attack. I heard she embarrassed the entire security team. She's getting fired for sure. Autumn kept her eyes forward, hands folded in front of her apron. She'd been through enough corporate purges and organizational shakeups to know what this looked like. Public dismissal. A message to everyone else.
Don't overstep.
She was ready for it. At the center of the courtyard, Ban Hyuk-jin stood on the raised platform near the fountain, hands clasped behind his back, his expression as unreadable as ever. Calm Minjun stood off to the side, bruised and silent, his jaw clenched tight. Hyuk-jin waited until the murmuring stopped. Then he spoke. 2 nights ago, he began, his voice calm and commanding. This estate was breached. 30 elite bodyguards were neutralized. Our security protocols failed completely. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. One person, Hyuk-jin continued, acted when others could not. One person saw what my trained operatives missed. One person protected me when protection was needed. He turned and gestured to Autumn. Autumn Belmonte. Every eye in the courtyard locked on her. Autumn's stomach twisted, but she kept her face neutral. Hyuk-jin stepped down from the platform and walked toward her slowly, deliberately. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out something small and black. A security badge. unmarked, minimal design. But the authority level engraved on the back was unmistakable. Absolute. Gasps rippled through the crowd. From today, Hyuk-jin announced, his voice carrying across the courtyard, Autumn Belmonte is the chief of internal security for this estate. Silence. Absolute. Stunned silence. Then the murmuring exploded. A housekeeper? She has no formal training. This is insane. Hyuk-jin raised one finger. The courtyard went silent. She answers only to me, he continued. Her authority supersedes all current security protocols. Anyone who disrespects her answers to me as well. He turned to Autumn and held out the badge. You see threats others miss, he said quietly. I want that near me. Autumn stared at the badge, then at Hyuk-jin, then at the sea of shocked faces around her. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Ban, she said carefully, but I need to be clear about something. Hyuk-jin raised an eyebrow. I keep my uniform, Autumn said firmly. I'm not wearing a suit. I'm not changing how I look or how I move. If I'm going to do this job, I do it my way. Min-jun let out a sharp breath of disbelief. But Hyuk-jin? He smiled. Power doesn't require a costume, he said evenly. It requires competence. He placed the badge in her hand. The uniform stays. Autumn looked at the badge for a long moment. Then she pinned it to her apron, right next to the small embroidered name tag that read, A. Belmonte, Housekeeping. Understood, she said. But I'm still cleaning when I need to think. It helps me see things clearly.
Fine, Hyuk-jin replied.
As long as you keep seeing what others don't. He turned back to the assembled crowd. Security protocols will be rewritten immediately. Training methods will be overhauled. And anyone who underestimates quiet people will be retrained personally by Ms. Belmonte. The bodyguards exchanged uneasy glances. Min-jun stood frozen, his entire worldview shattered in front of him. And Autumn? She adjusted her apron, smoothed her bun, and looked at Hyuk-jin with the same calm, unshakable composure she'd had since the beginning. When do we start? She asked. Now, Hyuk-jin said. 3 months later, the estate had changed. Security patrols moved differently now, quieter, smarter, less predictable. Guards were trained in strategy before strength, observation before action. Protocols were rewritten from the ground up. And at the center of it all was Autumn Belmonte, still wearing her housekeeper uniform, still carrying a cleaning cloth in her pocket, still moving through the estate like a shadow no one quite noticed. Except now, when she walked past, guards straightened. When she spoke, people listened. And when threats emerged subtle, hidden, the kind that slipped past cameras and sensors, Autumn saw them first. One evening, as the sun set over the Seoul Hills, Ban Hyuk-jin walked through the East Wing corridor. Autumn was there, quietly wiping down a window ledge, one earbud in, humming softly to herself. Hyuk-jin paused. Belmonte. She turned, cloth still in hand. Sir, anything I should know about? Autumn considered. 3rd floor surveillance camera has a blind spot near the northwest stairwell. Maintenance crew didn't notice, but I did. Already submitted the work order. Hyuk-jin nodded.
Good.
He started to walk away, then stopped. You were right, he said quietly. About everything. Autumn smiled slightly. I usually am, she said. People just don't ask the help often enough. Hyuk-jin allowed himself a small smile and continued down the hall, footsteps steady, mind at ease. Because he knew, everyone in the estate knew, that the most dangerous person protecting Ban Hyuk-jin was the one no enemy would ever suspect. The housekeeper with a laundry basket, the invisible woman who saw everything. Autumn Belmonte. If you believe people should be judged by their skills, not their job title, drop a comment saying, never underestimate the quiet ones, and hit subscribe. Only people who look down on service workers will walk away from the story.
Don't be one of them.